Music is a powerful force. It can transform your life and your perspective. In many instances, music mirrors your feeling and matches your emotions. It can take you back to a place in time when it can bring you to your present reality for your celebration and even your pain. Music can speak for you when there is nothing left to say. And my last point, music can carry you into the great unknown. For this week's artist, his music was a representation of his spiritual longing, both for himself and for the world around him. The intensely spiritual aspect of Albert Ayler's music was clearly aligned with the beliefs also of saxophonist John Coltrane, who was profoundly affected by the worldly sounds of Ayler's music. This week, we're getting into Spiritual Unity from Albert Ayler.
Thanks. It's good to be here. I could not wait for this episode.
Yep. Me either.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. It's going to be a good one.
We talked a little bit about it last week as we wrapped up. Sorry to interrupt you there, but we wrapped up and we were talking a little bit. Would we change our scores this week? So I'm curious to see at the end of the video where we land, what we do.
Yeah.
I am also curious about where you landed with your ratings.
Well, if you ever have a question, you can head over to theunconnoisseur.com. Our scores are actually up there. We've also got a jazz style guide that's up on our website. And Drew, that was a brilliant opener. And I just want to dialogue just a little bit about the jazz styles from the 60s. Some of the characteristics of the styles is open or free forms. The tunes are often complete improvisations. There's lack of preset chord changes and usually dense textures with high energy playing. And actually one of the important musicians for the free and avant-garde section in the 1960s was Albert Ayler. So this week's going to be an interesting discussion, knowing what I know about you and I's preference for avant-garde and free jazz.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, now's a great time. We might as well play a few clips, and then we can start the slideshow after the clips. What do you think?
I'm loving that.
Let's do it.
I'm going to recommend Dad go first, just because he's got one of the best clips on the album, in my opinion.
Okay, so I've chosen to do the Ghosts Volume 1, starting right up at the get-go for about a minute, and we'll get a splattering of what this album is really all about.
So variation
Ghost.
1, Ghost.
First variation.
First variation, yep. I like that because that's the melody that goes, it's common throughout this whole album. And you'll hear it over and over again as you listen to each track in this album. Also, the thing that I didn't realize until just now, interestingly enough, there's a gospel message to this, right, Matt?
Uh-huh.
And Drew, and it comes through just in that piece. And honestly, I was searching to think, where does the gospel come from, or where does it show up? But it's right here. And then Ayler goes into the other dramatic kind of presentation that he can make. So I like this.
It's funny that you said that, because it hit me just now as well. I'm thinking back to not necessarily a hymn, but the doxology, maybe when you sing the doxology at church, the beautiful medley of the doxology and this happens to be the head of the song, the melody of the song on this one, and it reminds me of, the doxology almost.
Or it could be the call to worship.
Call to worship, absolutely.
Call to worship. Let's pay attention here. Let's listen, because there's some deep spiritual overtones coming through right here, right now. So, yeah, good. Thank you.
Right.
I'm glad that hit you, because all week long I've been looking into how spiritual he really was. Matt, you're going to get into it in the slideshow. We're going to dialogue about it in the discussion. But coming up in the house, the Christian house, coming up at church, singing the music, the roots are there. And I think that was just it's been on my mind all week. So thank you for stating what I've been thinking.
Yeah.
So what about you, Matthew?
Yeah, let me do. I'm going to do Ghost's second variation, and actually, I'm not going to highlight Albert. I'm going to highlight Gary Peacock on the bass on my clip, because I think you'll hear Albert come out of his solo, and then Gary takes a few bars of solo work himself. So I just want to highlight someone other than Albert on the album. So let's do 6 minutes to right around 6:45 for me.
And I think that's good to note, Matt. Do you have that right in front of you? This is the Albert Ayler Trio. I think it's important to note that it is the trio. So when we get ready to hear this, you're going to hear one of the three. If somebody stops playing, you're definitely going to hear those two. So you wanted to hear this from about the 6 minute?
Okay.
I would just keep it going. Sorry.
Yeah, the work right there is fantastic by Gary. It's almost like he's on a different plane. He's trying to keep it melodic, trying to keep a time rhythm, but he's just expressing. I think he's just expressing so much in that. And it's at almost at a deeper level for me. You have to really kind of focus and lean into that. I guess the whole section there from Gary, but this, you got three incredible musicians just playing, and Albert steps aside and lets those two guys just kind of work their magic right there in that clip.
Yep. We've talked about this before, and one of the things that I really began to enjoy in this album this week is that you've got some form, and then there's absolute freedom in the middle of that. The drummer may not be beating on time, the bass player may not be moving on time. I'd heard in Albert Ayler, the story of Albert Ayler. I don't know if y'all got to that album. It's several hours long, but it's interview sections with different people. So you'd hear him from a big band sound, and then he's dialoguing. If our listeners haven't, the Albert Ayler story, I'm going to put the CD cover up, but it's a great way to hear his personal take on a lot of things. One of the people said that what happened is we're not putting a heavy beat down. You're not 4/4. You're not 5/4. You're just flowing. And that's what right there Gary started to do. And imagine Sonny trying to figure out where we're going to go and the steps that we're going to take when everything you want is organized. You get rid of that and just flow. And yeah, it's what that was to me.
we love to use food references, so I'll just reference it like this. You're at a buffet and someone's throwing meat at your face and someone's throwing biscuits at your face, and you're catching it as it comes in instead of going up and getting your plate. And that's kind of how that's kind of how the whole album works for me. They're throwing stuff at each other and still flowing with it very, very well.
I'm relieved that you didn't say after biscuits that they were throwing sausage gravy.
We only do that in Delta, Ohio. Only in Delta. That's some good gravy, though. I can't lie.
Oh, very good gravy.
Well, then let me.
All right, what do you want to hear?
I wanted to hear Spirits. In the middle of all of this, at about 2 minutes, and before I do, we're choosing sections that have spoken to us, something that it hits and vibrates with us, which is where this music is going. It has to hit you at the core, and you have to kind of think differently about what you're planning on listening to. So Spirits, starting at 2 minutes, is what I wanted to hear. So I'm going to hit play on that, and we'll dialogue about why. I was looking away. Were you guys making fun of me?
No, not you at all.
I was, but Matt wasn't.
I was not.
I in this song particularly, I just went into La La Land thinking about what is he saying? What is he doing? What was the accomplishment of this? And there was so much, and I have to say this, we talk about the feeling and the emotion. When we listen and we rate these albums, how did it make you feel? Were you on an emotional roller coaster with this album? And he talked a lot about, Albert did in his years, about the difference between emotions and feelings. We can get emotional about our music and passionate about following every note right, but when do we play what we feel? And if he's feeling the spirit move, that's what it sounds like to me when the spirit moves. Kind of a meandering concept behind it. And it took me to the quote that I read in Wikipedia. I mentioned this just at the beginning. Coltrane was affected by the outwardly sounds of Ayler's music. But following the recording of Ascension in 1965, just a year after this album, Albert Ayler had already sent Coltrane the Ghosts and Spiritual Unity albums, and Coltrane told Ayler later, "I recorded an album and found that I was playing just like you." Albert replied and said, "No, man, don't you see? You were playing like yourself. You were just feeling what I feel, and were just crying out for spiritual unity." A month later, Coltrane remained in his hotel room, practicing as usual, playing along to a tape of an Albert Ayler concert. Those two were feeling something in this free jazz, and I had never felt this until recently as I'm listening to the free jazz, the spiritual jazz from several of these artists. So to me, that's what Spirits was at that 2 minute. You feel it now. I feel it now.
Mm-hmm. That's a great clip. It's a good clip. I wish that we would have known that fact. We covered Coltrane's Ascension in episode number 54, and had we come full circle and known that it was Albert Ayler that inspired Coltrane, I probably would have listened to Coltrane a little differently and even scored that episode a little differently. So if you're interested in checking out, Coltrane's Ascension, that's episode number 54 for us. Please check out our discussion on John Coltrane's.
I'll put it in the upper right-hand corner of the screen so you can go back and watch that. But yeah, profound impact the two had on each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's get into some information so we can keep this train rolling.
Okay, let's do it.
Blue train rolling.
Let's do it. All right. So the first slide, just like always, I'm going to say it again, like I say it every week. Whatever you do, do it to jazz. You'll hear in just a little bit in our weekend music. That's pretty much what we do. Of course, tonight we are talking about Albert Ayler and the album Spiritual Unity from 1965. Albert is the tenor sax player, just to get that clear. Moving on to the jazz lingo for the day. This week I picked walking bass. Walking bass means an energetic 4-beat rhythm pattern. I really dig the way Earl Hines plays the 88s. He plays the tune with his left hand and a walking bass with his right. And that's actually would be backwards. He plays the tune with his right hand up on the upper notes and the walking bass with his left hand on the lower notes. But anyways, that's our jazz lingo for the day, the walking bass. All right, let's move on to the next slide, where you can get it. Again, you can find it on all these streaming platforms, and I did check Discogs this week, and it is still available on LP and CD. I put a quote down there on the bottom of that slide. Train was the father, Pharaoh was the son, I was the Holy Ghost. And that, again, is from Albert Ayler. And, of course, he's talking about John Coltrane, Pharaoh Sanders, and then himself. That's father, son, and
I really appreciated that quote when I saw that slide pop up. Dizzy used to say a lot about that. We're all just prophets of our time. Who's the greatest trumpeter? Does it really matter who's the greatest trumpeter of our time? And each one before me was a prophet of his time in the jazz music. And so I think that quote just really represents that. It's more of a personal thing there, but yeah.
Well, and the research that I did, and we'll talk about it in a minute in the slideshow, if that quote would have come from anyone else who was not as level and secure in his faith, I would not have put that quote on there just for sacrilege reasons. But Albert was he was religious, so it didn't bother me to put that quote up there.
It's weird because I'm going to say this now. I've often wondered what it would sound like to play through the Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
A trumpet interpretation of what a gospel message sounds like. It's been in my head. How do you play the gospel message? And to me, that's what I was hearing this week with Ayler's work, is you could start to feel what he was feeling in that. So,
who would you pick? Who would you pick that you'd want to hear play through the Gospels?
Like a trumpeter? I'm just thinking in terms of me to learn how to play through it. But if it was somebody, I'm looking for somebody with soul. I would think that the way in which Clark Terry plays through, I could hear him playing like John. I don't see him like Clifford would have been Mark, always moving. In the Gospels, the 4 different books have 4 different viewpoints. Mark's like a kid. I got to do this, and I got to see that. I got to. And I think about Clifford like that. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Well, I didn't get all the chromaticisms in there that he would do.
Well, I would think Wynton could be Matthew just because of his perfectionism.
Yes,
the same way Matthew was. I'd want to hear Wynton's take on the book of Matthew.
Right.
So then we're just missing John. Then maybe Freddie, or Dizzy.
Who's going to be the Dr. Luke?
Well, I'd said John for Clark. So you're looking at Luke the physician.
Oh, that's right. Luke. Okay.
Yeah, Luke. That's a good question.
Good question.
Let me say this: you guys can do your trumpet all you want, but there's got to be a drum in there somewhere. It's going to have to be some drumming. Come on now, come on.
I'm gonna do the Thelonious Monk and stomp my foot on the floor, off beat, off rhythm. I have my drum. I'm all right with that. We don't need no stinky drummer.
You could get away. Stinking drummer. You could get away with it, maybe. Maybe for Luke. But come on now.
Yeah.
All right, we got sidetracked on that. Next slide.
We did. So let's move on to the timeline slide. This was a fun slide to make this week. Albert was born in 1936, and then his first album release was in 1963. This album, of course, was released in 1965. In 1967, he was asked to play at John Coltrane's funeral. So that was a major highlight. So I highlighted that on the timeline slide. In 1970, he passed away. And that's all I'll say about that for right now.
You were roughly 4 months old.
Yes.
When he passed.
When he passed. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's move on to the information slide. And again, this week we are talking about Albert Ayler. Some of the influences that I found this week: John Coltrane was an influence, but he also listened to swing music. He also listened and grew up in the church, but he also listened to bebop music. So I kind of lumped those together as his influences this week. Drew, did you find any other?
It's weird. There's a lot of information, but he never really talked hard about that. In the interviews, his mom and dad both played a part in keeping him in music. That would have been about it. Those two would have been the only others. But
what about gospel music?
Church and bebop.
Yeah. Links right in with the church, the gospel and the church. I could have put gospel instead of church. I probably should have put that on the influences. He's got 31 studio discs and 3 compilations, so he's got a sizable collection to listen to. The genre that, of course, listed is the avant-garde and the free jazz. Few facts about Albert. In 1958, he joined the Army right out of high school, just like I did, so we have that in common. In 1962, he went back to Sweden, where his recording career began. Now, I say back to Sweden because he spent 59 and 60 in Sweden. Then he came back to the States, but then he went back in 62. In 1964, that's when most of his albums were released. So he's got a very big chunk of recordings that were released in 64. Then in 1966, he switched away from ESP disc label, the ESP label, and he switched to the Impulse Records label.
I want to back up just a little bit. He joined the Army. I was blown away to hear the recordings of him in the Albert Ayler story, and I'll make sure that we post this so you can see the cover. But he says, I wanted to go to Paris. I wanted to play with cats that were playing. Man, I wanted to hear what they were doing. Which is actually when he switched instruments. So his years in the Army were a huge deal against the wishes of family members. You're going to die. Don't do that. He decided that I want to go. So he spent time learning and playing with some of the greats overseas while he was there. And then you say coming back to Sweden from there. That was his home stomping ground. So he was going back home, which was a huge deal.
It never really clearly states on the wiki page if the musician was his title in the Army, but it does say that he played with all of the big musicians in the Army. So maybe in his story, I don't know because I didn't watch it this week.
He didn't even touch on that.
But if you think about the segregation back then, likely he might have been invited to participate, but not a member of.
Correct.
Yeah.
A lot like Coltrane, who was a special guest. Coltrane. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Now, one question I have, and we did the Memorial Day the recording a few weeks ago, was Albert, and I've watched it, but I've forgotten since then. Did we highlight Albert Ayler on the Memorial Day episode?
I don't remember.
So if you haven't seen our Memorial Day episode where we do highlight a lot of jazz musicians who were in the military, go back and watch that as well. Let's get into spiritual unity. The initial critical reaction was very mixed about this album. And I've got a quote right here from the Penguin Guide to Jazz. The poet Ted Jones likened the impact of this trio to hearing Someone scream F word on Easter Sunday in St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, the Penguin's Guide to Jazz. That was one of the quotes in there. But the critical reaction was very, very mixed. This was the very first album for the ESP disc label, though, which, it's the start of the label. And we talked a lot about the ECM label the last few weeks and the start of that and who he wanted and the sound that he wanted. Well, the ESP disc label, they hired Albert to get the sound that they wanted. So
And
and
I'd pulled up some information on ESP disc because I really wanted to know. So I was again digging into. It looks like I'm bleeping up on screen with bad internet here. The ESP disc's motto: "The artist alone decides what you will hear." And so to have Albert Ayler as his first launching musician kind of talks to that. That's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. Yeah, I mean, because you kind of never know what you're going to get. It's a grab bag. If an artist comes in and they want to honk and squeak, then that's what the label's going to put out. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Again, the first album for the ESP disc, Drew, that was a great fact. I'm glad that you brought that up. This was an auspicious beginning for the record label. Like you said, you never know what you're going to get because they're going to leave it up to the artist. The Penguin Guide to Jazz does go on and say this should be added to the core collection. So this is a core collection member.
Remember that. Penguin Guide says core collection. Let's talk about that at the end. Would you put it into your core collection? But we'll save that for afterthoughts.
6 Degrees this week was fairly easy. Ayler played with Don Cherry, and Don, of course, played with Miles. So I'm sure that you found another 6 degrees or another degree. Who did you find?
Mine were all additional degrees out, but I found that, of course, Gary Peacock, bass player on this, played with Keith Jarrett, played with Tony Williams, played with Chick Corea, played with Bill Evans, and then, of course, Albert Ayler played with John Coltrane. But I wanted to ask you this. Did you find out how and when Cherry and Miles played together? Did you dig into that?
I have to admit, I might have used ChatGPT for this one. You know what? Oh, I didn't copy it. I didn't copy it in my notes. No. Did you?
Yeah, I did. See, I do homework. I actually read stuff. I don't use ChatGPT. I'm more, and this is our journeys though. I'm extremely curious about all of this, and so I saw the Don Cherry, and I thought, how did Don Cherry and Miles ever play together? They're in two different worlds. Miles originally hated Don Cherry's playing, and then one day he's on stage with Ornette Coleman when Miles walks in. Miles then sits up with the band and plays Don Cherry's trumpet. That was at the 5 spot. So from that day forward, Miles always complimented and made sure to mention how much he appreciated Don Cherry's playing. So it was at the 5 spot back in, it was like 63, 64. So there we go. He played with Ornette Coleman too. Anyways,
well,
right along.
I'm still an unconnoisseur and learning and remembering all the facts. So I appreciate when you do the homework and I get off kind of easy because you bring those awesome facts and I sometimes forget to go that deep.
Yeah, we're glad that you do your homework. Thank you.
I just use ChatGPT, not all the time. Just this week. Today in jazz history. Today the episode releases on June the 18th. And this week, Ray McKinley was born in 1910, and Ray was a drummer and a band leader. The Metronome All-Stars recorded in 1956, and the Metronome All-Stars included Charles Mingus, Thad Jones, Lee Konitz, and Art Blakey. Also, in 1985, Jimmy Heath and Tommy Flanagan record a song called A New Face. One final quote from me from Albert Ayler for my portion of the slideshow. For me, the only way I can thank God for his ever-present creation is to offer him a new music. impressed of a beauty which nobody had previously understood.
I think that's a right on quote. A new music style that had not been heard before and or understood. It takes a while to understand it. And fortunately, you guys have studied this rather more deeply. So it has to almost grow on you, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. All right, Dad, tell us what's new.
This album is called Vision is the Identity, and it's done by Christopher Hoffman. What's interesting about this album, it is avant-garde on a free side, but it's the cello. The dude is playing a cello, rocking out with a cello, and it's remarkable, and it comes out very strong, and it really is likable. It's listenable, and it can be enjoyable. It doesn't force you. It doesn't push you. It does move you into an awareness and a deeper appreciation for this softer side of avant-garde jazz. The other thing I'd say about it is I was thinking about it this afternoon. So rather than looking at this album through a telescope and hearing this music through a telescope, look at and listen to it through binoculars. I don't know why that came to me, but it broadens your field. It broadens your understanding. It broadens your vision. Okay. And it just, it did help me appreciate this avant-garde album by Christopher Hoffman, and Vision is the Identity. I asked Mom about that earlier. And again, it has to do with looking beyond and finding through your vision, through these binoculars, finding some identity that Christopher Hoffman and his group are helping us find. What is our identity? So,
well, I will say this: if you like Vision is the Identity, we've got some music coming up in the next several weeks that you may enjoy. It's not similar, or it's not the same, but it's going to be very similar.
Yeah.
There are some artists coming up in a couple of weeks here that I think you're gonna, if you like Vision is the Identity, then you're gonna enjoy the artists coming up. So yeah. I won't give anything more away.
Some of the tracks on this, the title, It's Done, Better and Better. Now the one track, Narc Drop, that was hard. That was a harder freestyle stuff. And Farewell and Forever, that's a good track. The Narc thing, the other thing I like about this, each track is short. There's nothing over like 3.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you get a flavor and you can move through this and you're not encumbered by listening to a volume of music that fills your ears because it goes to the next track and the next track. So that's the other thing I liked about it.
The other thing I will say is this album is not available on iTunes just yet. I know that you two listen to it on YouTube Music. I had to actually go to Bandcamp and listen to it. But it is available on Bandcamp. There's three songs on the album that aren't available to listen to. Narc Drop happens to be one of those songs that I could not listen to. But yeah, that was a great pick, Dad.
It came out March the 6th of 24. So it is a relatively new album. You're just 12 or 13 months, 14 months ago. So there you have it.
Drew, I'll ask you the question that you asked me on the phone. What have we created?
What have we done? When he is choosing an avant-garde album for the week in the middle of Albert Ayler, you got to wonder what in the heck is going on. Yep. So let's get into Albert Ayler, Spiritual Unity.
Let me start here on the 99 list. Spiritual Unity was ranked at number 18. On the 06 list, he moved up to number 16. on the 22 list that we use, and again, this is a good place for a commercial, we are using the Jazz Wise magazine's top 100 albums that shook the world from 2022. On the 22 list, he moved down in the list to number 28. So I feel it's relevant that he actually moved down this week or this year on this list. There's a lot of great music coming up, and I'm glad I'm glad it is where it is, because it gave us a chance to experience some more of the free jazz. You know, we covered Ascension, we covered Broadsman, and those are two of our most watched episodes, believe it or not, are the free jazz stuff. So I'm interested in our viewership, and thank you so much. If you like what we do, like the video, subscribe to our channel, please. It doesn't cost you anything. I enjoyed the album. It's only 37 minutes long. That's the thing that I kept remembering, and I had to remind myself. We talked about it in the slideshow, but Albert, it was deep rooted in his faith. So, not to say that I would have liked it less had he been a Catholic, or had he been you name it, other religion. But in my mind, I'm thinking I can get on board with it because we're similar, because I have something in common with him. I can almost understand where he's coming from and his expression. Now, my rating this week, last year when we did this, it didn't hit me like it did this time around. We've had a lot more free jazz in our ears. We're experiencing more. It's not going to be an album that I go back to regularly, but for this week, it's what I needed, and I could totally comprehend it. I could totally get behind it. And I listened to it several times, and I listened to some other of his work too. And again, I like to jump the decades. It does say that he came out of his free jazz avant-garde stuff in the 70s. So I put on this afternoon, I put on Newts de la Fondation Mecht from 1970. And I laughed. I made it in my notes on iTunes. It has an explicit warning on every single song. That'd be like putting a warning message on a Snickers bar, if you ask me.
Right.
Warning: eating this Snickers bar may make you fat, because there's nothing explicit about. There's no explicit lyrics. I mean, there's no lyrics on the album anyway, so I don't know what would make it explicit. I just chuckled because on iTunes the explicit symbol is on every one of the songs.
Yep.
So Newts de la Fondation Mecht from 1970. It is on the avant-garde side. It is still, let me say a jazz term. It is still very honky. It's honking. He uses his guttural sound. The last album from 1969, the Impulse Story, which is a live album from 1968. I dug that. And I texted you guys earlier in the week about song number 6, where he actually gives a very short 2-minute sermon in there. I don't know if you checked it out or not. Probably not, because you don't ever listen to anything I say. But but
no,
his short little 2-minute sermon.
GPT for all of it.
No, not for all of it. I listened to these. You can't use Chat GPT for that. I listened. I did not get into Witches and Devils from 1964. I put in my notes, I tried. This album is not for me, even knowing what I know about Albert and his deep-rooted faith. The Witches and Devils, even though my senior paper for English was on the Satanic Bible, I just couldn't get into Witches and Devils. So that's my take on Albert. Dad, what's your take?
Well, honestly, I did read some of his bio as I listened to the album, and what I'm hearing from the music, from the ghosts, from the spirits, is a disturbed person, depressed, feeling oppressed, and keep in mind that this was a time of tumultuous segregation and pushback, where our Black brothers and sisters are trying to not only find their place, but resist the the push that they were getting from the white culture. And so he's struggling with all this, still trying to maintain his own sense of identity and who he is, but it became a struggle for him. And from a psychological perspective, and you might be able to appreciate this because I've had to deal with some depressives in my work, and I've had to deal with some folks that are manic depressive or bipolar, even borderline, and not to be critical of the music or Ayler himself. He just had so much to deal with, and finding his place, and then struggling with this new form of jazz, which resonated with him. And like you said, it didn't create immediate results where it was mixed reviews. And I think he struggled with that, still playing what he thought was best for himself. And I read somewhere that he convinced his brother, who was living in Chicago, Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Convinced his brother to learn to play the trumpet. Brother came out to New York, but got involved in the drug scene, the alcohol, and he felt so guilty about that. I had to appreciate that. I had to appreciate where he's coming from in that perspective. So here's a troubled man who was struggling with who he was, what was going on around him, and the times and all. So that's not really, well, that's a reflection of the album itself to me.
So you're looking at it from more of you're like I did. I looked at it what he was. I saw something different. I saw the religious part. You saw the depressed part.
Yeah.
Him trying to voice that.
Yeah, trying to speak that, and you can hear throughout the album the pathos that he's dealing with, trying to bring this out, as struggling with his own, his mental stability or instability, and calling attention to what's going on around him. And so,
how did the album hit you though?
Not well.
Not well.
Though, like I said with my clip, the melody carries throughout. It's not always recognized as the clip that I had, but it definitely, there's a melody to it. It didn't hit me well at all.
Okay.
The overall album. I'm waiting for our producer, who's deep in thought, to come up with some Drewisms.
Drew, what's your take?
You know, it's interesting because I've had a dialogue like this some years ago with somebody. I wish that I would have found the album earlier to let you all go back and listen to the Albert Ayler story. It is a long one, but you start to hear a lot of what you're referring to, Dad, in his struggles there. His brother, by the way, was a great saxophone player and realized that he would never play like his brother. So he said, why don't you change to the trumpet? So he spent 9 hours a day practicing the trumpet before he got called out to go play. So they did a lot of albums together, those two brothers. Great musicianship together. So I see that. When his brother died, he took it personally. And at the end of Albert Ayler's life, they don't know if it was the mafia who pushed him down and tied him to a jukebox, or if he had taken his own life and drowned in the river. So a lot of that goes hand in hand with what Dad just said. I heard it from a different space, though. I didn't hear it from, I'm depressed, woe is me. I heard it from the holding on to the God that carries me through. I'm longing to see what this is. We've talked about, or I've talked about it, Leonard Cohen's song. I play you know which one I'm referring to, but the secret chord that David played, please the Lord. Hallelujah. And I think that Albert Ayler was searching for his own way of blessing the Creator and giving something back. So this longing is coming out, but I don't I didn't see it from the depressed phase. I saw it from this rejoicing because things are so bad. The reason I want y'all to go listen to that Albert Ayler story is he talks about that. A couple of the guys mention it in the interviews. I'm tired of the black and white conversation. It's black music. No, it's not. It's white music. It's black music. It's music. And let's long together to find something in unity. Can we put the black behind us or the white behind us? Can we be one people? And he changed the conversation in my head. He's tired of it being the black classical music. This is the people's music. Reach for what we can do together. Can't we find unity? And so his longing for that, the opener was, he just wanted to find the unity. And I think that unity is with him and God together. So to me, a lot of his albums represented the struggle. Even more interesting, in the middle of this album, Dad sends over an album which I find very dark. So I heard something very different on both of these albums, and I longed for more of what Albert was trying to say. And if he's just trying to say, can't we all just get along? Let's play music. Let's lean forward to the Creator. Let's find something in common. And so for me, that was this album. It floored me this year differently.
Mm-hmm. And I think that he might have rubbed off on Coltrane a little bit with the religion aspect, because Coltrane, the Love Supreme album, not rubbed off, but they had that in common, where they worked together to bring the message.
In this spiritual jazz, this spiritual music, as we were seeing a group, this is what blew me away about the research for this album this week, is that the names that we're hearing are names that we don't hear anywhere else. The stream of who Peacock played with, yes, we've got all of the big names in the jazz world, but Murray, all of the names of the people he played with are so unique and so far out that I'm like, wait a minute, this is a whole nother stream of jazz that we have never really gotten into. Some of the best names of jazz are here, and I'm excited because they were all pushing for the spiritual jazz, not to be confused with the soul jazz that was also coming. The Jimmy Smith, for example, in the organ church music, but this spiritual longing for something else, and I think there's a stream of jazz to be followed in this. That again, I'm leaning towards the free jazz on the avant-garde more these days. There's my rant.
Okay, let me ask you this, Dad: would you recommend this album to a first-time listener?
No, I could not do that.
Okay.
No, it's too hard. The heavy blowing through the horn. I think it would scare a lot of people and say, "Oh, if this is jazz, I'm never going to listen to this stuff."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I would say no, not a first-time listener, for the very same reason. If this is what jazz is, I can't do it, and I don't want anything to do with it. And I would hate to push someone away from Esbjorn Svensson or Maria Schneider or the new standards by Herbie Hancock or Jan Garbarek, the jazz.
The plethora of jazz that's out there.
Correct.
To start with something like this would turn a lot of people up, because it's in the 60s, late 60s. It's too new.
Correct.
And so, yeah.
Drew, what about you? First time listener?
No. As much as I really have come to love this album, it's tough. It's tough for it. I don't know. It's tough because it's free jazz. And I know that
it takes some digestion. It takes some coming back to. It takes some taste. You taste it one time. It's not ready for you. You taste it again a few weeks later. Okay, it's not quite as bad as it was last time. And then on the third taste, you're like, okay, it's not terrible. It's not good. It's not terrible.
Well, what did you say about wasabi?
Yeah. wasabi. You feed me. You take me to a Chinese buffet, and all I can eat is wasabi. I'm going to get sick of it real quick. But you give me an egg roll to eat with that wasabi. You give me a tuna roll to eat with that wasabi. You give me a dumpling to eat with that wasabi, and I'm going to enjoy the wasabi a little bit more. So it's kind of wasabi, and you mix it with some of the other flavors of jazz that you've got, and you begin to appreciate the freeness of spiritual unity.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, I haven't asked this question in a couple of weeks. Would you change your score? We haven't scored the album yet, so don't tell me your score just yet, but would you change your score this week?
Yes.
Okay.
I will.
Yeah, Dad, we haven't heard your score yet, so you don't get a chance to change your score, but I would change my score as well this week, believe it or not.
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
It's going to come as a surprise. Okay, Drew, core collection. Would this be in your core collection?
It would be. I would go ahead and put it in a core collection. Personally.
Dad?
How many are in your core collection? Like 150?
There's not many right now. There really isn't.
Okay.
Probably about 10 or 12. I mean, something else from Adderley and, of course, Oliver Nelson. Blues.
Oh, the blues.
Blues of the Abstract Truth. So there would be a few of them, but yeah. Yep.
Okay. What about you, Dad? Are you going to be coming back to Albert Ayler? Not necessarily in a month. What about next year?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Okay.
No, thanks.
And even though I would change my score this week, I'm going to say no. That I probably won't. This wouldn't be in my core collection either. Just due to the fact that it does take a lot of concentration to listen to. It does meet all the criteria. The craftsmanship is there. The awareness, the creativity is off the charts on this album. The spirit, and it's the emotion for this week where I'm ready to go ahead and give you my score. A year ago when we did this album, it was the emotion for me that really it really knocked down the score. So my score for Albert Ayler Spiritual Unity was a 5.
And
5 out of 10.
That week when we went through it, that was the same score that I gave it. I'd given it a 5. It did not strike me. It did not hit me. It probably caused more anxiety than anything. It's free jazz. But coming back to it, the respect that I had for the free jazz players and what they were trying to convey, trying to break out of the molds of what was expected of them, that would have changed it. And yes, I would definitely have changed my score. I wouldn't go to a 10, but in order for me to say it'd be part of my core collection, I would have given it an 8.5 now. I really would.
Okay. I was going to say 7.5 for me. I'd kick it up 2.5 points, knowing. And again, we did it a year ago. I'm sure we did. We rabbit holed and we read about Albert. We listened to more of his music, but it didn't hit me because we've had more free jazz in our ear.
Dad, let's go ahead and ask you what your rating was first.
Surprisingly, I have it at 5.5.
Wow.
And I did that, because let me look at my notes here. The improv, the rhythm, because there's a rhythm to it, but I could hear the vocals through the instruments. They were conveying a very deep message, and also the historical content. I rate the historical content, and I had to give that a 10 because basically it's a relative start to the free jazz movement. So that's part of the reason it got to 5.5. So hey, I beat you.
Yeah, you did. Dad, that was a great score, and I'm not surprised, but I kind of am surprised. I thought you'd be under 5 for sure, based on some discussions we've had this week and how to listen to it and just to get around it. I didn't think you'd go above 5, so I'm really impressed.
Yeah,
you're coming a long way. You really are, because to be able to give it a 5.5 even. It shows that Yeah, it's definitely a hard album, and to even just to wrap your head around, and let alone 37 minutes of yeah,
Honking.
hammer tapping on your honking.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
I do feel like I'm getting to a place where I can appreciate the plethora, the broadness of jazz music.
yeah.
And
Well,
I think it's so sad. It's so sad that his life was cut short.
Yep.
34 years old. What a future that he would have had if he would have survived it all, whatever it was.
yeah.
So it is a very sad,
Yeah.
grievous kind of
Yep.
situation where he's gone. Yeah.
But
All right,
Dad,
well,
I want to say this though, Dad. It speaks to what you hear in the album, though, and that's why I
Yes.
had to pause before I said anything to it, because you hit the nail on the head with that. You know, if he's going through all of these things, if he's struggling to find a place, struggling to find a purpose or his space, and at 34 he decides to take his own. I mean, what was he struggling through in 1964 when these albums came out? So it does touch on a lot of that. He's gone too young.
Well, I'll just say the devil doesn't mess with lukewarm. The devil messes with hot. So if he was hot, the devil's going to mess with him and,
Yeah.
and tell him he's not good enough, telling him he's not working hard enough, telling him, you know, to go ahead and you might as well just end it because you suck.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying. We don't know. We don't know, but maybe I'll ask him when I get there.
Mhm.
And what would he have become? Just like Clifford Brown or Coltrane or Lee
Oh, no.
Morgan? What would they have
Oh.
become if they didn't go too young? We could always hope and dream.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Dad, tell us about your weekend music.
Well, it was obviously with this album, I listened to a variety of things. I went back to Chick Corea again because I like the flow of Chick Corea.
Mhm.
I had some Art Blakey in my ear with the Jazz Messengers, and even some Art Tatum this week. And some of that stuff, some of those albums I listened to, obviously through my hearing aids, but while I'm riding a bike, and I can find I can get myself out of the area, out of the space. Brad Maudeau and the Art of the Trio. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I had. Yeah.
Good. Drew, I'm looking forward to hearing about your weekend music because you were at Live Jazz last night, weren't you?
we were. We went and had some things to test out, but we got to go to the Republic of Texas Big Band. They do a big bash every second Monday here in Lakeway. We've recognized a couple of people sitting in the band, so it's always good. Spent about an hour and a half just listening to the big band music swing. So it was a good night in music. We've had a busy weekend with a puppy running free, and to get out and listen to some jazz last night was just stinking awesome. So it's outside of that, it's been a busy week, and of course next week when we sit down to record, I've got to figure out where, when, and how, which is part of the system that I'm working on tonight, so that I can be portable, because I will probably be at the Texas Jazz and Blues Camp. By the time this comes out, I will be mid-throws in the middle of shooting all week. Thursday of next week, I'm going to be doing an 8 to 8 or 9 p.m. day, so I've got a 13-hour day coming ahead. But that means I get to photo and do some video of Bill Evans, the sax player who played with Miles some years ago. So I'm looking forward to meeting him and hanging out a little bit with him during some of his master classes. So I got a week of music coming. I'm just trying to relax and get ready. So
that is fantastic.
And Matt,
You're gonna have a busy week. You're gonna have a busy week next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a super busy week. So, what about you? I know that you were busy last night with something. Was it Game 3?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Game 3 of the Stanley Cup, of course. Yes, I'm a huge hockey fan. So this is the NHL playoffs for the Stanley Cup. It was a good outcome for me last night. My team happened to win. But and I'll talk about this next week. But tomorrow night I get to hear my favorite big band, Three Rivers Big Band, at the club room. So I'll talk about that a little bit next week. Like our slide shows in the initial slide, though, whatever I do it to jazz. It's funny because this week I had Hemispheres in My Ears by Rush, and I forgot how good that album is.
Oh, wow.
The song "The Trees" really hit me this week on that album. If you've never heard "The Trees" by Rush, it's on the Hemispheres album from 1974. Really kind of hits with what's going on in America this week. Yeah. Anyways, mowing the yard. I'm listening to Kamazi on my bike ride to work today. I got Brad Meldau in my ears. Some Chick Corea and Gary Burton in my ears this week. So I've had it's been a plethora of different, the Wild West music going on in my ears and jazz this week. So I couldn't even begin to mention every single thing that I listen to, but yeah, that's pretty much been my week. I'll have a lot more to say about Three Rivers Big Band next week.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So Drew, I'm going to give you the honors.
Oh,
I want you to do the honors. Oh, please. Tell us who's coming up next week.
Man, am I excited for this one. Dad, do you have it in front of you? You want to make that announcement?
Oh, no.
Right.
We defer to the producer.
We are running quickly from Albert Ayler to Mr. Herbie Hancock. The album, Maiden Voyage. This was on new Blue Note from 1965. Man, oh man. I might actually say it'd be part of my core collection. We'll find out next week if I do. But Herbie Hancock,
tune in
Maiden
next week.
Voyage from Blue Note, 1965. Coming into Herbie, man, go ahead.
You got Herbie Hancock on the piano, Freddie Hubbard on the trumpet, George Coleman on the tenor sax, Ron Carter on the bass, and Tony Williams on drums. This is an all-star lineup.
Man, oh man.
Yeah, this is the sesame chicken and rice on your plate buffet style that you just can't get enough of. This is the grandpa's angel food cake with the marshmallow icing that you just don't want to stop eating. So I'm not giving anything away about how next week's is going to go or anything, but tune in next week to see how we rate Herbie Hancock.
Absolutely.
Please, no more. Don't say any more.
I wonder what the ratings will be.
I wonder.
Maybe a 5.
So, Drew, why don't you? I might get above a 5. Tell them where they can find us.
Will do. Each week, you can find us right here on YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in to our channel, by the way. And again, to all the UK supporters, it's blown me away to see some direct messages. We're on YouTube, obviously. We're on Spotify, Amazon, and iTunes for the podcast, for y'all driving down the road. For the YouTube, thanks for staring at our face long enough. And sometime we will figure out my glitch on my end, but thanks for tuning in on that. Matt's over on TikTok, and of course, find us at theunconnoisseur.com. You can get more information on what our ratings have been. There's a couple other links that we'll continue to share to other podcasts, as well as some other information coming up. At the end of this, you're also going to find in the description a couple of websites that were crucial for information searches for Albert Ayler. There's a great UK.co that I found a plethora of information on for Albert Ayler. So I'll put that link below. Make sure to follow, hit the notification, and please like this episode so that we know that, well, for us, it's fun. We're not trying to monetize it. We're not trying to make a big splash. It's our dialogue about our jazz journey. So for us, thank you for joining us as we dialogue as brothers and as sons and as fathers. So we appreciate y'all.
Yep. See you next week.
From our cameras to your computer
Bye now.
screens, cheers.